I literally told the guy who bought the sub when its owner, Steve Fawcett, the famous billionaire, died in a plane crash, and the sub was then purchased by another guy to operate it. And I told him, you're going to die down there if you dive that thing. And I felt very strongly about it.
Yo, what up with it? Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Hood. And I'm sure by now everybody done pretty much heard about the submarine that imploded underwater going to visit the Titanic. Everybody been talking about it, from co-workers, friends, family, people in the grocery store, whatever. No, you honestly can't go nowhere without hearing about it. So if you're not too familiar with it, basically a billionaire explorer and a couple of his friends decided to enter a submarine to go and take a tour of the Titanic underwater. Unfortunately, those people did not survive, but I am curious as to why it imploded. You know what I'm saying? What went wrong? Being that most people are already pretty familiar with this situation, in this video I want to get more into why this submarine imploded in the first place. So without further ado, let's jump right into it.
Joining us right now is James Cameron, diver, explorer, director of The Abyss, a deep-sea thriller, and most famously, of course, Titanic as well as many other great films.
I was out on a ship myself when the event happened on Sunday. The first I heard of it was Monday morning. I immediately got on my network because it's, you know, a very small community in the deep submergence group, and found out some information within about a half hour that they had lost comms and they had lost tracking simultaneously. The only scenario that I could come up with in my mind that could account for that was an implosion, a shockwave event so powerful that it actually took out a secondary system that has its own pressure vessel and its own battery power supply, which is the transponder that the ship uses to track where the sub is. So I was thinking implosion then. That's Monday morning. I got on the horn again with some other people, tracked down some intel that was probably of a military origin, although it could have been research, because there are hydrophones all over the Atlantic, and got confirmation that there was some kind of loud noise consistent with an implosion event. That seemed to me enough confirmation that I let all of my inner circle of...
Yeah, I heard about that. I believe this was some military branch who had a top secret submarine in the area who heard an explosion like an hour and a half after these people departed. But being that this was a top secret submarine, probably being used to spy on other countries or something like that, they couldn't really relay that information to everyone else about the submarine until, I'm assuming, they got out of that area. So, you know, I'm pretty sure basically they were like, yeah, that submarine you guys were all going crazy about on the news, we heard that explode like 2-3 days ago. So, hey man.
Then I watched over the ensuing days this whole sort of everybody running around with their hair on fire search, knowing full well that it was futile, hoping against hope that I was wrong, but knowing in my bones that I wasn't. And so it certainly wasn't a surprise today. And I just feel terrible for the families that had to go through all these false hopes that kept getting dangled.
Yeah, that's another thing I want to speak on. This is a very unfortunate situation. I hear a lot of people saying, you know, why should I care about this rich billionaire? He wouldn't care about me. If this were the other way around, they probably wouldn't care. They wouldn't do anything to search. Why should anyone care about billionaires? You know, me personally, I feel like that's a very unfortunate mindset to have, you know what I'm saying? You may find yourself in a very scary situation similar to this. You may not be in a submarine going to visit the Titanic, but you could be driving on a bridge and someone knocks you off into the bottom of the river or something like that, and you're trapped inside of your car. You know, it would be very unfortunate if while you were drowning, people scrolled through your Instagram and seen a bunch of bullshit and decided not to help you based on preconceived notions, you know what I'm saying? So just always keep stuff like that in mind, man. You never know where you're gonna find yourself.
You know, as it played out.
You said it was on Monday that you learned of these listening devices under the water had picked up the sound of an implosion?
That's as it came to me. Now that's hearsay, multiple, you know. They were credible sources, right. So I took that as a factor that I multiplied in with the other factors, and I couldn't think of any other scenario in which a sub would be lost where it lost comms and navigation at the same time and stayed out of touch and did not surface. I was also told, and I don't have confirmation on this, that they were on descent. They were a couple hundred meters above the seafloor, and they dropped their weights. Now, the only way for the ship to know that they had dropped their ascent weights, which would be an emergency abort, is if they had called that in, that they were ascending. So I believe now that they had some warning, that they heard some acoustic signature of the hull beginning to delaminate.
You've made dozens of, I mean, just extraordinary deepwater expeditions, including more than 30 to the Titanic itself. You've also gone far deeper than the 13,000 feet where the Titanic is. I think you've gone deeper than just about anybody into the ocean. I wrote it into, I forgot the name of the place you went, but the Challenger Deep, which is just extraordinary.
Deep, yeah.
You went in your own design. Yeah, you went in your own designed craft that's a submersible that was experimental and didn't go through the sort of the standard safety protocols. But
correct.
The difference is you were not taking passengers on board. Would you ever have taken passengers on board a submersible that had not gone through the standard maritime safety
you gotta have
protocols?
nuts to steal to try something.
No,
like
not
that,
at
bro.
all. I mean,
I'm just
my
being
sub
honest.
that I went to the Challenger Deep dove safely 3 times deeper than Titanic. We made multiple dives in that sub. That sub was a single-seater, and it was only contemplated that myself and the engineer.
But even this small clip of the inside of this sub looks like it's higher quality than the one that recently went missing.
With whom I co-designed the vehicle would be the only
It's just my
pilots of that
observation, you
sub,
feel
and we
me?
worked on it for 7 years. We knew every detail of it intimately. I was involved in every phase of the testing, so you know, I assessed the risks. I understood them very well, and those were risks I was willing to take. I would never take it upon myself to ask someone else to take that type of risk. And if I were designing a multi-seat vehicle where I intended to be the pilot, we'd go through all of the rigorous test protocols and review protocols that you have with, let's say, ABS, which is the American Bureau of Shipping, or DNV, or German Lloyd's, who are the major you know, bureaus.
That's what I'm saying. Did this company go through the proper protocol to make this thing official? You know what I mean? Because it just doesn't look like it. You got this $30 Dollar General controller. The inside of it doesn't even look high quality. I'm sorry. If I'm paying $250,000 per ticket and I get to your place of business and you pull out that controller and talking about taking me to the bottom of the ocean to view the Titanic, I want my money back in full. It's not happening. You know, you gotta peep the red flags before you go do things like this, bro. You know, wherever you find yourself in life, never ignore that gut feeling, because it could be a lifesaver for you.
That Class A sub, they call it classing, but it's basically certification. And I think it was unconscionable that this group did not go through that rigorous process.
What is, you know, this was an experimental design. There's no question about it. It's a carbon composite. You can tell us more about what that actually means. I mean, it's the kind of stuff used in spacecraft, but is it designed for deep underwater pressure? And what is the danger of that kind of material in this kind of environment?
It's completely inappropriate for a vessel that sees external pressure. You know, carbon fiber composites are used very, very successfully for internal pressure vessels, like, let's say, a scuba tank. And you can get 2 or 3 times multiple of what you could get out of steel or aluminum for that type of pressure bottle. But for something that's seeing external pressure, all of the advantages of composite materials go away and all the disadvantages come into play. So if you're using a uniform material like steel.
So they were actually using the wrong material to protect this vessel. That's interesting. See what I'm saying, man? You gotta peep the red flags, bro. You got to.
Or titanium or ceramic or acrylic. You can do computer modeling with a high degree of accuracy and confidence. The second you start doing carbon composite or any kind of composite materials, you're introducing 2 materials that are in contact with each other. The filament itself and then the epoxy matrix that it sits within. And at that point you have degradation failure. So we always understood that this was the wrong material for submersible hulls, because with each pressure cycle you can have progressive damage. So it's quite insidious, because you may have a number of successful dives, which is what happened here, and then have it fail later. If I were diving in a sub that was fully certified, I wouldn't think about it. But even in my own sub, which had a steel hull, I knew that if I dove several 2 or 3 times, it was probably good to go, because you could cycle steel hundreds of times, if not thousands of times. But that's not the case with composites. So it's quite insidious, and that, I think, lulled them into a sense of confidence and led to this tragedy. But these are known things. They're known within the engineering community.
And we also want to point out OceanGate's former director of marine operations, he wrote this engineering report in 2018, I think it was. He focused his criticisms on the company's decision to rely on acoustic monitoring the sounds the hull made under pressure as opposed to a scan of the hull. According to him, the company claimed no equipment existed that could perform that kind of a scan on the 5-inch thick carbon fiber hull.
Yeah.
I know it's difficult to say, obviously, without reading the report, but I'm wondering what you make of that, because it seems like this company was making a big deal about the sensors they had that could, sense a problem with the hull, and if they could sense there was a problem, then they would have time to turn around and go back up. Clearly, they didn't.
It's a bit like saying we have a bit of a poor design for the engine in our jet or our rocket ship, but we have a sensor that will tell us if it's on fire. To me, that's cold comfort, and I think that if you're building a hull as a safety protocol, but I consider it a bad thing because it sheds a light directly on the fundamental flaw of their design. You have to remember the DNA of this design concept goes back farther. It goes back to the quest to go to the Challenger Deep that I was involved in, obviously. And there was another sub design that was competing with ours at the time that was based on a wound filament composite cylinder with 2 titanium end caps. And I told those guys point blank, you're going to get killed in that thing. And they ultimately never dove it. I literally told the guy who bought the sub when its owner, Steve Fawcett, the famous billionaire, died in a plane crash, and the sub was then purchased by another guy to operate it. And I told him, you're going to die down there if you dive that thing. And I felt very strongly about it. I had nothing to do with OceanGate, and I never tried to warn Stockton Rush of the same thing because I thought maybe they've solved it, But I was pretty opinionated about it at the time, and they had a similar idea of doing acoustic sensors too. They call it delamination, when water ingress starts to force the layers of the fibers apart, and theoretically you can hear it. I actually believe they heard it with their ears, not through the sensor system, in the last moments of their lives, and that's quite a horrifying prospect.
So it's seeming like to me this company cut a lot of corners. They didn't go through the proper channels and organizations to get that submarine certified, and that's definitely shame on them for that, right? If people have warned you in the past that what you're doing is experimental and you should not be taking other people down that far into the ocean, and you should not use that material to protect the submarine, I think that's a negligence on Oceangate themselves, right? But I don't know what was in the contract. Maybe it told them that this is not certified by this company, that company, or that company. So I'm sure that some people would argue, well, that's on their body for getting in that submarine when they were warned not to. But I also feel like, why would you even have this be an option for people if it hasn't been certified by the necessary organizations, right? But yeah, man, that's all I got for y'all today. Rest in peace to the passengers on that submarine. Let me know how you feel down in the comments below about the whole situation. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like and subscribe button for your boy. And until next time, man, peace.